Okay, we just listened to the video that I recorded at WiggleCulture, saying homesteading, why we do what we do. And right now, what I want to do is, with you guys that are here, let's talk about it. Reactions to more like the content, not necessarily my presentation or whatever, but any positive feedback is always appreciated. But really, I want to talk about the content because Ty and I are, well, we have our own ideas, and I want Ty to share his as well. But any notes or any comments that you feedback from what I shared in that? Shoot, somebody start.
You can count on me to start.
Okay, Michael, go for it.
We lived on a farm for a year, and it's a lot of work. A lot of work. It always works better when the whole family's involved. And so there's a lot of people who are from the older generation where, like for instance, people your parents and grandparents' age, really your grandparents' age. Your grandparents lived like that, and their children decided not to. Same thing with most of us. My grandparents lived that way, and their children decided not to, which became my parents. So it only takes one generation for that to be lost.
And it is hard to get it back. It really is, because like what I said in the video, my kids have been raised here. We moved here when Lauren was only 6 months old. And she's my oldest. And so they all were raised here. However, we didn't know how to live this kind of a lifestyle when we were raising them. So we had to figure it out. And now I'm feeling a lot more confident, and I'm having to help them overcome whatever to learn what I've learned so far so we can go forward. So there's still a learning curve even now with our children. If this had been kept on, it'd be a whole different story. Sorry, I kind of cut off Michael. Sorry.
Yeah, did you want to say something else, Michael? He's talking.
Yeah.
I appreciate what Michael said, because my grandparents were farmers. My dad was raised on the farm. My mom was just telling me this week on the phone that she used to milk a cow, and she had to go bring the goat in, and she grew up in North Carolina. They harvested tobacco and worked out in the fields all day long and picked cotton. And I'm like, I can hardly believe you ever did that, because she's not at all an animal person, nor does she. I said, I can't believe you milked the cow, because she doesn't like animals very much. And that she did this stuff on the farm because neither of my parents really did that. And my daughter now is 28, and she's starting to realize how important it is to be outside and working the land and just getting involved in gardening. So I've tried to get her involved for years, because I've always liked gardening, but she's just like, no, I don't want to be outside. It's too hot. There's too many bugs or whatever, And so just this year, she's been doing a whole lot more, because she realizes now the health benefits of it. There's also grounding. I don't know how much you know about grounding, but you can get grounded, and all this buildup of electricity can go out of your body when you're out. You get sunshine. Plus, you said you work hard, but that's where our bodies were designed to be. And so you talked about working hard. The harder we work, the more fit we are, the better we sleep at night. And if we work, physical work, the reason most of us have left the farm is because of the physical work. Nobody like, oh, you want to have a good desk job, so you don't have to work hard. But really, that is a hindrance, we found out now with all the heart attacks and the obesity.
Yes.
All the things that have happened because we have left the farms and moved to the city. And so, yeah, let's have those comments.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for that beeping. I don't know what that was.
That
Thank
was
you, Kelly.
my phone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
George.
I know. That was my gadget.
No problem.
I really, you know, you're talking about grounding, Kelly. That is really a major benefit. It really is. I mean, I like to sit outside barefooted and play my guitar. You know what I mean? Because that's grounding. You know, but
I can't wait for that, George. You can come to my house and be barefoot with your guitar.
it's gotta be tall grass. I can't let you see my ugly toes.
I'm not going to be looking at your feet.
And Michael, did you have something else you wanted to say? I kind of cut you off before, and then when I stopped, it looked like you were talking.
No, I was listening to what you were saying in the video, and I'm not sure if I hadn't lived on a farm for you that I would have understood as much as I do. But there are still going to be people, even though you had a very good delivered message with a very admirable goal, there's still going to be, forgive the excited baby, but there's definitely, there's still going to be people who don't get it, right? But that's not our problem. We can't make everybody get it, you know? It's not what we do. But it was a very, very good video. I like it. And because honestly, to be quite honest, anyone who, and this is not a stab at any in particular person, but anyone at all who complains that a farmer or a homesteader works too much, they don't know what work is. Because being a guy who's worked turnarounds most of my life, most of my career, work is going to a job where you're away from your family. But if you're out in the yard doing some work on your own property where you can benefit from the fruits of your own labor and you're helping your family, it's really not work. I mean, it's work, but it's not work in the sense of the world. Because if your wife can stick her head out the door and say, hey, honey, lunch is ready, you're not really at work. You're still at home. So that's our dream, is to have that again. So the closest we can get right now is 10 minutes from the job site, which is awesome, because I can just swip right home and, you know, and help out and do whatever I need to do. But the goal for us, after living on a farm for a year, I was outside from sun up to sundown doing stuff on the farm because it needed to be done. But my wife was there too. And she was outside sometimes in the garden and doing stuff, and we were right there together. So it's not really, it's a whole different kind of life. It's not really like going to work. So my whole point in saying all this is so that anybody watching this who doesn't know what it means to be like a homesteader, there's a channel on YouTube, Homesteading with Off Grid with Doug and Stacy, I think it is. And they're homesteaders, and they're like middle-agers that decided to sell all their stuff, get a small place, and get a piece of land, and they got sheep, and they're really funny, and they're fun to watch. That'll give you a taste of what homesteading is like. They don't have children, so it's a little different, but it's all about building a life. Think about Goshen. They left their land and they went right outside of Egypt, right there in Goshen, right there in the little land, and they made it flourish. You know, if they had been leaving home to go to a job and then coming back at the end of the day, the land would be desolate. There has to be someone taking care of the land. Unless you just uproot all of the landscape and put concrete in its place, then you don't have to take care of it. But then your rain becomes a problem because it doesn't absorb into the ground, and it's just, man creates its own problems. So by going back to the ancient path that actually works, you create a more economic and a more sustainable life, because everything works in a cyclical cycle and it all helps each other. And by what WiggleCulture is doing, by trying to cause the reshape the land and make it work together and work for itself. It's kind of, I really am excited to see, for your children to see what they're left with in the end of that. So, hallelujah.
Well, I just want to comment that, we were talking earlier about loving our neighbors and loving our enemies. And Michael said, he shared a verse about the enemies being those people who oppose us. And your video, Carrie, I find it like it's a great example of loving your enemies, because you spoke truth in great love without, condemnation, without trying to defend yourself or trying to be defensive or offensive. You were just stating truth as it is, like, how it is. And you did it so sweetly. and you did it because somebody opposed, right? Did an opposition. So that is a great example for me.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the problems that we encounter is a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding. And, it is a lot easier to be loving and compassionate towards others once we have been humbled ourselves, once we have found ourselves in a position of, wow, I thought I knew something and turns out I was wrong. We tend to be more gracious towards one another, or at least in my experience. It's easier to, well, that's something that I've learned. I've learned humility. I've learned how compassion for others, because I'm realizing, a lot of people just don't understand. And instead of getting mad or upset with people when they don't understand, help them understand. And so, yeah, that was the motivation, because like I said, the person that made the comment that triggered my response in making that video, I had no animosity towards him. I mean, I wasn't upset with him, like mad at him or anything, or offended or anything. It was just like, clearly you don't understand what we're doing here. And Ty and I, we've gotten frustrated over the years, and I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for him. He can share his own thoughts. But before I do that, though, does anybody else have want to make any comments? Because I have a tendency to monologue a lot, as my husband says.
Yes. And what you said earlier about, not being upset, not being offended by what he said, that is dead man talking. Like, you died to yourself, and that's how you're not affected by it. Thank you so much for making that video and for showing me how to love my enemies. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carrie.
Yes, Emily.
I want to comment because, see, he stayed with you for a couple months and we stayed with you, and my viewpoint is totally different because I understand. I come from a place of understanding what you're doing there. So your comment about lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, that's perfectly said, because I understand and have been there probably just like he was, staying with you for a couple months, being able to see what you do. But I understand why you work so hard and, pitched right alongside you guys and worked hard to accomplish, and help and get get food on the table and stuff like that. So I understand. And it's also personal perspective. Some people don't mind working hard. Some people like, well, the modern day, age we live in, I don't want to work so hard, so I don't have to. Well, I understand the benefit of it. You understand the benefit of it. Other people understand the benefit of why you're doing what you're doing. And yeah, it's beautiful. So my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did you want to say anything, Niels?
Well,
Keep trying to touch that button, but it won't let me clear it until I get the cat off of there. No, I just made that comment earlier. Come out of her, the city, my people, or come out of sin. Because I looked somewhere in scripture. I think it mentioned, I heard in a sermon one time that you're not supposed to live atop one another, like apartments and things, or too close together, because you know, you
I think the
drink from
beginning
your
of
own cistern and stay away from others that are coveting. Basically, you want what they have, you want to be what they got, or their husband, or their car, or whatever. You know, it's keep up with the Joneses kind of mentality. But when you're out in nature, like we are out here, we're what 6.5 miles from city limit of Aiken, South Carolina. We're in a little, I think it's just a community. I don't even think it's incorporated. We don't have even a flashing yellow light, a couple of stop signs, you know, but we're out in a little horse community, basically down a country road. And, but we're 10 miles from Walmart and 7.5 miles from the gas station and so on. So we reap the benefits of being not too far, but not too close. But we have a garden, we have chickens. And although my wife found out, you know, that there's kind of a limitation there on what kind of animals that you can have on your property. Horses, oh, they love that, you know, but you can't have the others too much. We had a goat at one time, and with poison ivy, but the poison ivy is still here back around by the garden, but I know where it's at. So I have to attack that. But we have a garden, we have our chickens, and we have our horses, and we gave the goat away to another lady that she thinks that her horse fell in love with the goat, because the goat was always trying to get into her paddock or her pasture there, and they would always nose up each other and feed around each other. They got attached to one another, so she asked if she could have it, and my wife gave it away to her. So she took the goat. We have ducks and cows, and not cows, dogs and cats. I think of what else we have here at the moment. You know, it takes some learning of how the Creator made these individual creatures, animals, and the way they act and the way they are. And I don't know if you heard the birds, but we have chimes outside, and you know, and you let the flow of what the Creator has made in the winds and the sounds, the insects, the birds, the bees, you see how nature that He made reacts and how they depend on one another. The pollinating bees for the flowers that certain flowers the chickens like to eat, that makes my wife mad, and just different things about the way the grasses are and kind of feed the horse. Some horses like this feed, some horses don't like that kind of hay, and so on. So they have particular characteristics of what they like and what they don't like. The same thing with human beings. We are raised we're raised by being programmed. When you're in the city or public schools or public market, you're programmed. A child, when it's first born, has an empty database in their eyes and their ears, and they learn quick. And they pick up on that satanic nature or human nature, on greed or stealing toys from other kids. Where when you're out here in the country, I think you have more of a nature where you could teach them and show them ways that are more natural, and you'll get your share by doing the things you're supposed to do. Our special needs daughter has her chores that she needs to do. She may not like to do them, but they have to be done. And then we reap the benefit of it. When we sit down, we have fresh tomatoes from our garden, which taste wonderful. They're not hothouse tomatoes or greenhouse tomatoes. Green beans, jalapenos for the salsa. I like Mexican food or spicy food, and some years are hotter than others. I don't know why, but same kind of jalapeno, same strain, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, my input was I thought that, you know, once you come out of the city or out of sin or out of Egypt, and you learn not what the world wants to teach you, but what the Creator has made for us to take care of, to toil, to work the ground, work the soil, work your muscles, your mind, your heart, and with one another. And you know, people that live out in the country, they have like a different second nature to them where they help one another. Or farmers, my crop didn't do so well, his crop did, you know, or, you know, hey, my husband had an accident, but the other farmers will show up and get his crop done and get it harvested where they can still make a profit off their crop.
Yeah, I found country folk are and farmers, people that have that are tied to the land in that way, tend to be generous and very willing to help and share in abundance. You know, that what out of their abundance of what they have, and you know, we've had our animals get out at all hours, and we've had our neighbors' animals get out, and you know, you can relate to them, and you're like, okay, you know, we'll stop whatever's going on, you know, turn the stove off, and we got to go wrestle or go get the cows back in or whatever. And you appreciate one another, and yeah, like what Michael said before, the work. It's some of the work. Well, I mean, I'm going to let Ty talk more about. I've done some things outside, but not to the level that he has. So it's kind of, I don't want to take away from him. Ty, are you there?
I'm here.
Would you like to share a little bit? I think everybody, or unless there was somebody else that wanted to say something in response to the video.
Well, what direction would you like me to go?
Well, wherever you feel led.
Well, in a big way, part of my plan or part of this homesteading, the thought I've been developing, working on, to make it a ministry, because in the alternative agriculture community, where people are figuring out better ways, it's not big business. Big farm is as bad as big pharma. It's and everything else. It's part of the problem. Here, I'm going to go ahead and turn my video on. Go ahead and turn it off, Carrie. Big farm, Monsanto, you know, they're much a part of the problem as anyone. So the people that are doing it alternatively for health reasons, and they're smarter, like the liberals, the Gaia worshipers. They got a lot of stuff figured out that the conservative religious type don't. But the problem is that they're framing the discussion as Gaia worshipers, earth lovers. It's all good stuff, but then you take it too far and make it a pagan thing. So what's missing is the conservative scriptural people with an understanding of the Creator and His ways. That's missing from the dialogue. So I want to be ministering to the people by doing really good homesteading, but saying, hey, it's not about the creation, it's about the Creator. His ways are this. The garden can teach you so many lessons about all the good things you need to know about living. You can learn in a garden if you really look at it that way, because the Creator has made us. It's an integral part. It's part of His plan. He wants us to be living in the land. He wants us to be down to earth. So that whole approach, I want to get out there and talk to the people that are they're not going to care about Judaism. They're not going to care about Christianity, Hebrew roots. There's a lot of just regular people out there. So I want to homestead in a way that can introduce them to the Creator. That's the intention. I don't know if Carrie got into that enough with the video, but that's my heart behind it. It's more than just taking care of me and my family. It's like, yeah, we're living off the land and taking care of ourselves. If that's all I wanted to do, I could scale things back a lot and just make it about us. But I want to make it about more than just me. I want to make it about the idea of a community, the idea of sharing what I know and helping everybody come out of the system. Because the system has got everybody trapped. And if we're not getting back to the land, we're slaves. Michael was talking about the generation that left the land. They didn't necessarily choose that. They were economically forced off their land because they couldn't cover the taxes. Big agriculture made it unprofitable for the small farm, and they lost everything. And once you're tied from the land. It is so hard to get back, and you're totally a slave. So that is my mission, is to fight that and teach people how to do it and to rebel against that which enslaves us, to come out of Egypt. That's my heart. But it's like, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing. How do you do it? So that's why I work. That's my motivation. So I don't know what else to say. I had written down some notes that I wanted to say. Yeah, work is not a word. Somebody said that. The Creator worked for 6 days. He gave us an example. He worked 6 days and took a day off. Work is not a bad word. He created us in his image. If he's a worker and he creates, why don't we? Why are we so afraid of getting our hands dirty and getting down to earth and working it? Because he said, here's the seed. Here's the plant. It's going to rain. Here's your dirt. Create something that matters that I can be proud of. When I plant a tree, that is a generational thing. That's one of the most important jobs I could do, is plant a tree. A food tree for my kids and my grandchildren to eat from. So, and then I wrote down a note, become a slave to the system when you leave the land. I think that's what Pharaoh did to those in Goshen. I think he somehow got them off the land and got them using banks, got them having jobs and, time cards and all of that. It's like, you don't have to do that, but they chose it, and we choose it as a people. Okay, and part of the Creator's idea is to give, part of his creation is to give man dominion. He's the intelligent designer. He made man as a necessary part of the land. The land needs us. The leftists, the Gaia worshippers are saying, oh, let it go back to nature. Man is such a plague. We need to reduce our population. And no, it's not true. It's a complete lie. It's one of the things I want to push back against. The abundance on the land on 5 acres. You can feed 5 families on 5 acres if you do it. There's no scarcity. That is a complete lie. The abundance is just like waiting for us. And everybody can live abundantly and healthy. We don't need dentists. We don't need doctors. We just need to get back to the way we're supposed to be living. There's a better way. In Egypt is not it. Man, I'm preaching here. I'm sorry. So the land is waiting for man to interact. The land is crying for us. You go out in the forest, it's not the way it's supposed to be. You let it just go, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's not ideal. If we, as understanding it, and we work it right with the animals and the plants, and we shape the land, and we hold the water, and we do the things, we make mountains and valleys like our Creator did, we can make sustainable agriculture that lasts for generations with no input. You don't have to have fertilizers and herbicides. You don't need all that. But we need to know how to do that. That's what I'm doing. That's my kind of agriculture. I'm taking permaculture principles, but I can't say I'm into permaculture because it's way too pagan. It's all a religion, and it's like, that ain't for me. I need a better way. I'm representing my Father. This is the kind of agriculture you need to do. Come see it. Come see my land, see my dominion, what I did with what the Creator gave me for his glory, not mine. I'm not trying to be the greatest homesteader that ever lived. I'm just trying to be a guy that's walking it out the way I'm not talking about it, I'm doing it. It's one thing to study scripture and have understanding. It's another thing to take it all the way down to the earth. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Good food, good health, no doctors. Oh, and a great place to hear the Creator. We can get this in Genesis. You hear the whispers of his voice in the garden when you're working the land, and you begin to see how great what he made is. The creation is so wonderful. You're with him. You begin to understand him and hear him. That's why I say you can learn everything you need to learn in the garden. I really believe you pretty much can. I don't know if you need to know it if you can't learn it out there. And scripture kind of backs it up. It's very much a garden sounding document. So and I guess that's about it. I kind of rambled a little bit here, but this is what my intent of this homesteading is to be, bringing the gospel to the people, really. That's, if it's possible, because there's a whole segment of people out there that need to know that just move from worshiping the creation, just move a little bit more and look at the creator, because randomness didn't do this. It's just not, it just didn't happen. There's intelligence behind it. So let's just acknowledge the creator. And man, they may be closer than half the religious people we know. But just being good, decent human beings, just working the land and just living together and loving each other. There is a lot of power in that. And we're not doing it. We're people that are still stuck in a system. So what is all of us doing about it? And I'm not trying to condemn anybody, but we're all should be condemned because we're all in Babylon. We're still in Egypt. All of us, myself included. I'm not counting myself out, but I work hard to leave it. So I'm done.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you. Yeah, I am. Yes, thank you. I didn't share much really about my idea as ministry, but Ty mentioned it, and I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. One of the things, when I say I caught the vision, I have caught the vision as to what is going on here, and I see what we're doing as a ministry. Somebody had, in that comment that spurred all of this on, they said they were freed up, had more time to do more important things. And that triggered well, what's more important than farm work or, working in the dirt, so to speak. And he mentioned about talking about leading a moral life and feeding the hungry and clothing the naked. Well, he didn't say clothing the naked, but feeding the hungry, I think he said. And I said, well, what makes you think you can't do that and do what we're doing here? And in fact, this is the best way to do that. When in understanding, because we're seeing the Creator's ways in practical living. We're seeing the being fruitful and multiplying. We're seeing how one little seed fallen in fertile soil and given the proper elements that it needs can multiply. Unbelievable. And then when it multiplies, it produces other little seeds that when that's planted in fertile ground, and that effect is huge. And there is no scarcity, like Ty said. This idea of so I see there is a ministry field, or a field of where we can minister to others, in educating and informing and then doing. And then, I can give you fish, or I can teach you how to fish, or I can do both. Come on over for a fish dinner and I'll show you how to fish. And do it in such a way, because we have to. If we have to think for the future. A lot of the times, I know when I was working at a job, I went to school for accounting, and it was specialized education. But when I came out, I had a degree that qualified me for positions that I would not have been able to have beforehand. It wouldn't matter who my father was. If I didn't take the specialized training, I wouldn't have been able to do that job, and I wouldn't have been able to bring that kind of income that job would bring. Well, in order for my kids to follow in my footsteps, they're going to have that same specialized knowledge. Well, that came at a cost. I mean, I had to go to college, and there was an investment involved, and that job put me in a position, while I learned some things that I can apply to the life that I have here on the homestead, as far as understanding, balancing assets and liabilities, that kind of thing. it really, it pales in comparison to what I can learn just being raised in an environment that I can feed myself, being in an environment that we could put a roof over our head literally by going out into the woods and, cutting down a tree or taking a tree that's already cut down and, you know what I mean? Doing something, living off of the land, and knowing how to do practical things to live off of. Those skills are lost in my generation. I think that's like the craze. The generation now is everybody wants to get back to that. Everybody wants to learn about that. And so there's a hunger for that, but we got to take it one step further. If we don't teach this to our children, it's going to be the same thing that we talked about earlier in the recording, that it'll be lost on the generation. Oh yeah, I did it. I milked a cow. Oh yeah, it was wonderful. It was so nice to have all, but I didn't tell my children about that. My children, I sent them to school and they, got a career and they, went off and did something else, and it's lost. Like it's just amazing to me. But the positive side of that is if we do pass that on to the next generation, it has a multiplying effect. It's not just a single act. It's a lifestyle, and it shapes how we live our whole lives. Yeah. Anyway, so my desire is, along with what Ty was saying, I see this as a ministry. I see it as a ministry that actually we all could participate in on some level. But it starts by doing it. Like, we actually have to do it. I mean, it's a whole lot more effective. Like, when I think about the Messianic, my studies that I do for the Bible studies that I do, and if I present ideas to people, they're my ideas that I glean from my studies. I don't just regurgitate what I heard on a YouTube teaching. You know what I mean? That what I'm giving is something that I grew, or, that grew in me, that I share. I am a lot more, how do I say this? So in the ministering of what we're trying to accomplish with this homesteading, when you do it, it is a lot more effective to share that with someone else, rather than just, hit a share button on a really good article that you read and you pass that article on. It's not quite as effective as if, you did it yourself and you're sharing, that personal. Okay. I feel like I'm going on and on and on. Sorry about that. I had no, okay, Callie, you have something you want to say?
I was just going to say that when you were talking about having food to share, or that one comment about feeding the hungry, his idea, I assume, of feeding the hungry would be to, I don't know, go buy food for them or something to that effect. I've worked with refugees quite a bit, and they have a program where these trucks will go to the downtown area and they can go pick up grocery bags of food. And I've been in their home when they've brought the food home, and because they're a Hindu culture, they don't eat meat, and so they had cans of vegetable beef stew. Well, that went into the trash. White bread, they are rice culture, right into the trash. They don't get to choose what they get in the bag. It's all white bread. A super box of Cheerios cereal. They've never eaten Cheerios cereal in their life, so that went in the trash. They had a big frozen chicken, and they didn't want that because they don't eat meat. And I think out of that whole bag, I don't know if they ever went back again. I can't even think what they kept.
because they even had like little sugar-free chocolates that had caramel in the middle of them. They've never been exposed to that. They don't know what that is. Anyway, my point is, if you have a farm, you can give people real food. All that was the kind of food that they can keep in a food pantry and store for many, many months at a time. And it's probably from a wrecked truck or, you know, some damaged goods that happened somewhere along the line. And so the food that people are being fed in these homeless shelters and in that kind of a program, feeding program where they're giving food away, the food pantries, that's all they're filled with is garbage. And on the farm, when you're growing fresh produce every week, and you could say, come and we have excess produce and anything you'd like, you can have cucumbers and carrots and tomatoes, then you're really feeding them and not just putting something in their bellies.
Yeah, that is a great point. I saw on Facebook somebody, I was reading or scrolling, and they had a food drive, and they had taken a picture of all the food that they collected, and they're like, look at what everybody has done. And I'm sitting there looking at all of the processed food and the canned goods, and I'm just thinking, you know, this is the problem with, and I touched on this a little bit in the previous recording, that we need to offer real solutions for the real problems. And what I feel, I don't want to attack Christianity, because it's not like it's Christianity's fault in general, but it's a generalization of being raised. What I was exposed to is that we see a lot of ministries trying to meet the needs through the paradigm of the world. And that's not helping. It's not helping anything. It's just perpetuating or putting a candy coating. I mean, it's not really addressing the issue. And what you just said, Kelly, exactly speaks to that. I mean, and we can take it a step further beyond food, physical food. I mean, it's spiritual food too. This is why I was saying about truth. People want answers. You know, we left the church, when we left the church 8 years ago, it wasn't by our choice. We didn't want to leave the church. In fact, I had just told a woman not too long beforehand that we never intended on leaving. We were committed. We had, you know, no intention of leaving. But I made the comment underhandedly to the people that were in the room but I wouldn't be surprised if you kicked us out. And one of the girls was like, what? Why would we do that? We would never do that. And it was months later, I was gone. And it was because we were speaking about something. We were speaking about the Sabbath day. And they didn't want to have the discussion. And when we were asking questions about the law, the Old Testament law and the New Testament believer, they had given us a document and saying, this is what we believe. And I said, great, I'm glad to have something, you know, hard to look at. I'm going to look it over, and then can we discuss it? And they said, no, this is what we believe. If this is not acceptable to you, then maybe you need to find another place to go, essentially. And I was like, wow. Well, we're now in a position 8 years later to where if somebody were to present something like that to me, I would say, sure, let's discuss it. And I could actually have a conversation about it. And I think the problem at the time, why they handled it the way they did, is because they couldn't discuss it. They didn't have an answer. This is what we believe, but we really don't understand how to answer all of your objections. And we're not really prepared to try and figure it out right now. So, but now we're in a position where we actually have answers, and I can understand a lot of the things that were in that document. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. There's a few things in there that I would probably say, no, I don't think that applies. But you know what I mean? This is what the world is hungry for. People want answers. People are starting to realize, not everybody, some people I think are content with the way things are, don't rock the boat. But there are other people out there that I believe who are hungry for what's real, whether it's in a Bible community or in the grocery store or on the news or entertainment, something that's real, that's wholesome, that resonates with their inner core, that, yeah, this is the way it ought to be. And where are the people that testify of that? That's what I think the anointed is. That's what I think our job is, as we are being endowed with wisdom and understanding, and our eyes are being opened to seeing things, and we're gleaning from the instructions of our Father, simple things but are profound, and we know how to distinguish and to discern between the holy and the profane, and we don't compromise our Father's ways just so we can have a temporary success, something that makes us feel good, or so we can have big numbers. We're going to do this because we want to swell the numbers and get more people to like what we're saying. No, we're going to speak the truth, and if that means I stand alone for a while, then I'm going to stand alone for a while. But in time, the truth will stand on its own, and people will start recognizing that. But we have to start doing that, and I think that's our job, and I feel convicted that that's my job. And I think that's where, kind of like what Ty's been talking about, where he sees, he said what he said. So real solutions. We have real solutions to deliver, and people are hungry. The harvest is, what is it? The harvest is white. Is that
Yes, white and harvest.
right?
It's
Where are the
white.
harvesters?
That idea of having that little doctrinal or whatever it was, this is what we believe. I think that's maybe what people longed for before was this black and white. Okay, this fits into this box, and this is what I believe. And here's all the verses that fit into that box. And what they forget about is all the verses that don't fit. Like this doesn't back up that doctrine that you have written there. And like you said, I think people are hungry to say, stop just telling me what to believe. That the next generation, I don't know, Julian, you can speak to this. They're not willing to just say, this is what you believe, this is what we've always believed, this is what our fathers believed before us, and you have to, we bought it all spelled out for you. Well, they're not answering the questions of why. Like you said, they couldn't even explain why. They have the scripture, and if you went to that scripture, it would seemingly back up whatever it is they're trying to say there. But I think it is a growing need, just like in the food community. A lot of people are coming out. I shouldn't say most at all, because it's probably way under most, or not even halfway. There are a lot of people that are wanting to know where the food comes from, how it's being grown, the soil it's being produced in, how it's managed after it's picked, how many miles it has to travel. And the same thing with the word. If we can't show, I think that it's a bit messy, actually, the Bible, because we can't always dogmatically prove everything and make a little box for it. And so, because you say, well, what about this verse? That doesn't, match up with it. When you're like, well, then what do I do with that? Well, just forget that one. So we have to take the whole scripture and try to figure out what God is trying to say to us through this.
Great, thank you. I have no idea how long we've been talking about this. Anybody else wanted to chime in? Go ahead, Kay.
Yes, I just want to say that I can see and I can believe that Ty's vision is from the Most High, because of the direction he's taking his family, the direction is what he's doing, and the fruit of it. Like feeding the hungry, what does that really look like? I mean, from the world's point of view, You buy a little something from the grocery, you throw in something in the, in this big box in the grocery, and you can put in like any fake food there. And it makes a person, the one giving, feel good about himself.
Oh, and one thing additional is that it has to be non-perishable. So you can't put
Oh
raw fruits and vegetables.
That's
You can't
right.
put raw cup noodles.
Non-perishable, that's right.
Cup noodles work.
And it just makes the giver, feel good about himself, being able to do something. But with the real feeding the hungry, you need to make sure that that the Most High is pleased, no less. And that is hard. That is, that's a generous giver, a cheerful giver. And you have to do it like happily, joyfully. And it reminds me of this widow who gave her all. That must have hurt. And so that picture, like your whole family working very hard to be able to, show Father's love, to be able to spread Father's love, that is very selfless. It's very selfless. And I hope that our family will be able to do that too someday in His perfect time. And that is mind-blowing, but it's a lot of work, a lot of preparation in the beginning, but like in time, the work becomes less and less, and relationship, we can focus more on relationship, hopefully. But yeah, so just very grateful that, we've met your family. We've met everybody here who are so teachable and so humble and so open to this idea. And, okay, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to, there are selfish reasons in why we do what we do as well, because we do want to eat well. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we're doing all of this just to, minister to everybody else out there. It's like, no, we're trying to.
No. That's not selfish at all. Because if you're healthy, you're able to do more in the end, right?
Yes, and that is the key, is that we are learning, and this is the part that's been difficult. When you're dependent, and I say this all the time, my kids are probably sick of hearing it, but when we're dependent, we're dependent. We're not really much help to anybody else because we're dependent. Until we become independent, then we can be of any, kind of help to somebody else. Well, in this world that we're living in, we have become dependent on the system, whatever that is, in so many different areas. And it is imperative that we unplug. We have to unplug. And obviously we can't unplug from everything all at once. Thank the Father that we're able to wean ourselves off the system and still be okay, but we need to start weaning ourselves off the system. If we're not doing that, then we're going to stay dependent. So we have to wean ourselves. Well, when in weaning off of that dependency, we have to remember that we're now becoming dependent on our Father. And that's the thing. A lot of times people talk about self-sustaining, or I want to be self-sufficient. Well, I don't have to depend on anybody else but myself. Well, that's where, that's something that sticks with me, is that, no, I don't want to be self-sufficient, because eventually I'm not going to be able to make it, because I don't have enough to supply all that I need. But our Father does, and He puts tools in place, and He has resources made available to us, and His Spirit, connecting with our spirit, we can be dependent on him. That relationship needs to always maintain a dependence on our Father. But then we become independent of the system, and then we can actually be helpful to those around us, and in a big way that otherwise we can't. I don't believe. Okay. Any final comments? And I promise I won't comment after your comment. Ty, did you want to say anything to wrap? Michael, anybody want to say anything to wrap this up?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for all of this, and we yeah. I don't have a call to action. Pray about it. I'm continuing to pray about how to go forward with this, but I'm working on developing WiggleCulture a little bit more, and I may be, and I'm doing some more things at Messianic. So if you're interested in either one of those things, I'll probably share a little bit about it in the future on here, but you can always go to the websites, and they have a WiggleCulture.com or Messianic spelled with a Y.com. There's a subscription. You can subscribe to an email, which I haven't been doing much with it in the past, but I'm going to start doing things. So I'll keep people abreast as to what's going on if you want to subscribe to that. Or if you want to just subscribe to either one of those video YouTube channels, you can be kept in the loop that way too. Okay, so that's it. And thank you guys, and we will talk to you more next time.